The first autistic child I worked with was Dan. Dan was 3 years old. He was a warm, loving boy who loved to hug the people around him all day long. He would explore his environment in a unique way, and he could stare for 20 minutes at a streetlight. When he was excited about something, or when he was overwhelmed, he would wave his hands. And he didn't make eye contact. A successful work session with him was defined as, among other things, when he makes eye contact and didn't wave his hands. In fact, the focus was on what Dan cannot do and what is better for him not to do. And with time, I realized that we were trying to make Dan normal or neurotypical, which is a term the autistic community is using to describe someone who is not on the autism spectrum or without any other neurological difference. 6 years later, I became a school teacher for autistic children. And I noticed that the educational programs is based on the same concept as the program I used to practice with Dan. For example, these rules that you can typically see in autistic class, that the children will do more neurotypical things, like talking in a conventional way, and less autistic things, like to speak specifically about their interest. I want to emphasize that these programs are definitely important, and certain aspects should be part from the program designed for autistic. But working with autistic children made me ask 2 questions about intervention program for autistic. The first one is, what autistic adults think about it? And the second one is, does it work? So let's see what autistic adults think about it. This is a quote from an autistic adult from a story in Haaretz about the treatment for autistic children. He said, "I tried to do everything other kids do. These were years of imitative behavior. I believed my autism was gone. I thought I was acting like a normal 16-year-old. But those who looked at me from the outside could tell that something about me was different. It was impossible to ignore this tension, and it took its toll on me. I was exhausted all the time, I got sick, my self-esteem was very low. Today, I understand that trying to normalize by force is impossible, and in the end, comes back to you like a boomerang." We see us talking about his challenges with adapting to social norms, and we can see similar expressions in many of the writings of autistic adults. The second question I ask myself is, does this program work, specifically for autistic children's future as autistic adults? And this is what the research shows us. Autistic adults often experience higher rates of mental health conditions compared to the general population, with studies reporting at prevalence rates ranging between 54% to 80%. In addition, autistic adults face higher rates of unemployment, both relative to the general population, but also for other disabilities, with rates reported as high as 75 to 80%. We also see that quality of life and well-being measures are significantly lower than the general population. Following to that, I ask another question. Can this program work differently? To address this question, I drew upon research knowledge and my own personal experience working with autistic children. In my work, I noticed that their strengths and abilities are often overlooked. I've seen children with an amazing creative skills, like drawing skills or story writing skills. I've seen children who easily put together a 1,000-piece puzzle, and children with an extraordinary memory. And in the research, I saw that although most intervention programs are focused on their difficulties, there are more and more studies in the autism field that are from a strength-based approach. And that made me think, what if we develop a program that emphasizes their strengths and help them identify them? And this is what I do in my research. I developed an intervention program that focuses on identifying and raising awareness of strengths among autistic adults. The main research aim is to examine the impact of this program on their well-being, self-esteem, strength knowledge, and strength use of the participant. So basically, we have two major stages in this research. The first one is the development of the program, and the second stage is the experimental stage. The development of the program was done in a couple of stages and rounds. In the first one, I classified the strengths and talents through interviews I conducted with autistic adults and the literature review. And here are some of strengths that was found. Hyperfocus. Just imagine you can sit for 3 hours in front of your computer without the need to answer the WhatsApp messages that pops on your screen. Creative thinking. They think outside the box because they look at things from different perspectives. Good memory. As someone from the interviews told me, she defined herself as a human database. And also, attention to detail, honesty, reliability, and more. In the second stage, I designed the intervention, and the intervention was built as an online course in the Moodle system that you all know. We chose to build the intervention as an online course also from a strength-based perspective, because we know that autistic people have high interest and frequent use of technology, and also because of the accessibility, availability, and ability for self-learning that the online environment enables. In this course, the participant will participate in 8 sessions that will help them identify their strengths and promote their awareness to their own strengths through various questionnaires and tasks. Let us do together one of the tasks. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to find out which one of the black lower shapes in the bottom you see inside the color shape. This is the left one. So this task tests visual perception, an area where autistic individuals often excel compared to neurotypical. In the third stage, I did evaluation and adaptation of the program to autistic people from their own perspective. And that was done through collaboration I had with autistic people in several meetings. We did the adaptation, for example, for sensory needs, such as the colors, the load of information displayed, and the adaptation of the task both in visual and auditory formats. That was all the stages of the development of the program, and the second major stage, that is about to begin very soon, is the experimental stage. And in this stage, the participant will be randomly assigned to either an experimental group or a control group, and each group will complete assessment measures at 3 intervals. Before the intervention, immediately after, and 3 months later. The research has the potential empowering autistic people, raising their well-being, and at the same time, focusing on autism positive characteristics may also help change prevalent perceptions about autism, both for autistic people themselves, but also for others, thereby reducing the stigma attributed to autism and contribute to a more optimal community inclusion for autistic people. Towards the end, I would like again to give space to the autistic voice and quote Don Prince, an autistic researcher and writer who wrote, "Knowing that there is much illusion in the world, I feel sure that my way of being is only a disability of context, that what have been labeled symptoms of autism in the context of my culture are inherited gifts of insight and action." Do you remember Dan and the other children in my class? I hope that the cultural context will start to change so that others will be able to see their gifts and they can be fully included into society. But it's also up to all of us to change our perception towards autistic people. And the next time you meet someone on the autism spectrum, I encourage you to really hear what he has to say and look at him as we all are, with both challenges and strengths. Thank you. I will be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Meital. Do you refer to all spectrum of autism or just the high function?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the criteria for participating in the research is you need to be over the age of 18, you need to know how to read, write, and to use a computer independently. But yes, in the autism spectrum, we talk about 3 levels of functioning according to the DSM. One that's requiring assistant, and number 2 is requiring a substantial assistant, and number 3 is requiring very substantial assistant. And I'm guessing that most of the participants will be from level functioning 1, and some will be from level functioning 2.
Hi.
Hi.
Great work. I'm wondering if you think that your intervention is only will only work for adults, or whether it could also be adapted to children.
Yes, so the main reason that, actually there are 2 reasons that I choose to focus on adults. The first one is because there is really a great lack in research regarding adults. I don't know if you know, but there is a lot of research concerning in autism field that are from different disciplines. But most of the research is focusing on young children and maybe adolescents, but there is really not enough research in regarding autistic adults. And you know, sometimes all of those children will become adults, so we really need to catch up. And the second reason is that I choose to focus on adults is a methodological reason, because I needed to get as much input as I can because I developed this program and I wanted to be adapted to autistic. So I thought I can get the most input from adults through interviews and participating with them in all the parts of the research. But I really want in the future to adapt it to children. I think it can work.
Hi, Meital. Thank you. First of all, it was great, and I loved it. And I have to say, I have to ask you about the diagnosis, because one of the things that I think as a philosopher of education is that some of the, I don't want to say mistake yet, but some of the things that humanity did was trying to name things, like to put naming or tags on things, on people, on humanity, in order to create sort of like a behavioral understanding of people, because eventually we need to understand the behavior of people in order to anticipate how do we want them to function, how do we want them to function within society. And I think that in this respect, autism was sort of like, for me, a flag, a red flag to understand, to realize that the fact that people try to classify, right, and to try to diagnose, try to say like, here, this person this is what he is, so he must behave like that, right? And then with autism, eventually we have a spectrum, which means that we cannot literally say what does that exactly, like what does it mean exactly? And in the process of years, it became a negative thing, although it is not really a negative thing. I mean, not necessarily. We didn't prove that. We didn't find, as you told us before, there are a lot of good things that autistic children can develop, you know, capabilities that we sort of like stopped them, you know, from developing, because we were like, okay, you're not capable to do that, because according to the spectrum, right, or according to the characteristic of, and we block them. So I wanted to know what do you think about the diagnosis in terms of like, because I think eventually that's what influences mostly on intervention eventually.
Yeah. Basically, I completely agree with you about this classification and diagnose and the whole system. I don't know if you know this, but until the 80s, homosexuality was part of the DSM. So it's really got us to think, about other things that are in the DSM and could be changed over the years. Because today we can't imagine that homosexuality is part of a mental disorder. So I think that things are changing, and I think that the diagnosis is a good thing for the treatments, because if you need to get, this stamp from the environment that you really need help, like in a school environment, that you need help and you need to get the assistance that is right for you. So it's a good thing for that. But yeah, for labeling people as autistic, and actually there is the whole movement of neurodiversity today that is talking about how human differences in our brain, like autism, need to be part of human diversity and not as a disability. So yes, it's really, I can expand on that a lot, and we talk about it later.
Hi, Meital, thank you for the talk. My name is Doron from the Hebrew University. Such an important project. And my question is, from your experience, did you come across educators that are on the spectrum, and how is their approach to educating? Is there a difference than the neurotypical educators?
So in my work, I didn't come across educator, but actually I've been last month in a conference in Ben Gurion University that autistic people organized for autistic people. And there was one educator there, and he really talks about, we're talking about, in disability study, it's called the affirmative model, which we want to accept the identity and look at it as also a positive thing, and not like a tragic look of disability, like in the medical model. But I have this, one of the participants that helped me in the research, she is an autistic researcher, and she researched the autistic community about their communication. She also a PhD student, and yes, they are talking about, they're really like they're wanting to change things, like also in education and also in research, and they are really trying to do that, like for instance in this conference that was organized by Autistic for Autistic. And it's a movement that, it takes time. Hopefully it will come to education eventually.
Thank you very much, Meital.
Thank you.